Hello and welcome to another episode of Chuchu as a Ranker. On this episode we're going to be continuing our albums of the year list. This time it's 2004, and 2004 is an absolute beast of a year, one of my very favourites in fact. So without further ado, let's be complete rankers and rank up a storm. These are my personal top 10 albums of 2004. So we're going to be kicking off this list with Hopes and Fears, which was the debut album by those cheery, chubby, cherub-looking motherfuckers Keane. And at this point in their career, Keane's claim to fame was using no guitars on their recordings, instead building everything upon keyboards and synths, although there is bass guitar on there, and the keys are often disguised to sound like guitars, so what was the point again? But I guess it does work because the production is super clean on this record. You can hear a pin drop because the production is so damn slick. And from a vocal standpoint, Keane are definitely coming from the Morrissey school of influence, as are a lot of bands around this time. In fact, that's the general narrative of this year. Morrissey and bands that sound like Morrissey are very much in vogue. Bands like Franz Ferdinand, The Killers and Keane all had debuts this year. Ironically, this is actually the album that kept Morrissey himself from reaching the top spot in the UK albums chart, so small boo to Keane for that one. Boo. But I guess you have to expect stiff competition when you have tracks as good as the stomping Somewhere Only We Know, or the 80s pop glide of Everybody's Changing, or epic closers like Bed Shaped, and awesome atmospheric synth ballads such as We Might As Well Be Strangers and She Has No Time. So yeah, just a great curtain-jerking debut from Keane. Next up, we have another Morrissey aping debut, this time in the form of Hot Fuss by The Killers. Frontman Brandon Flowers makes no bones about his love of Morrissey, and although he would veer off towards more Bruce Springsteen territory later in his career, on this record he's basically playing at being a mini Morrissey. Yeah, and on this album, basic indie guitar and 80s sounding synths combine to make a monstrous concoction of U2 level stadium rock, and there's just plenty of epic, flamboyant sing-along fun to be had on this record. From the growling opener Jenny Was a Friend of Mine, to the massive disco hits Mr. Brightside and Somebody Told Me, to the epic album highlight All These Things That I've Done, and glistening deep cuts like Smile Like You Mean It and glamorous indie rock and roll. I also personally like that if you squint just a little bit, the Killers sound almost identical to 90s Britpop legends Shed 7. So yeah, Hot Fuss is just a really fun debut from the Killers. Coming next, we have Antics, which was the second album by brooding post-punk pinups Interpol, and yeah, this record feels very much like it's hewn from constant touring. It's more rhythmic and rocking in its composition, and just sounds like a lot of the nuts and bolts and screws have just been, just tightened up a little bit. To that end, a lot of the looseness and spontaneity of the debut Turn on the Bright Lights has evaporated, which is not necessarily a good thing. But that added tightness does bring some true workhorse power, and arguably Interpol's best ever songs reside right here on this record, most notably in the wicked bass and rap of Evil, and the stop-start guitar riffing of Come Here, Come Here! Also, top quality additions such as the shadowy Take You on a Cruise or the booming album highlight Not Even Jail make this just another great LP by Interpol, even if it doesn't quite match the insane heights of its predecessor. And back in 2004, I absolutely loved this record and played the shit out of it, so an easy placing on this list. Next up, we have the sophomore album from Kings of Convenience entitled Riot on an Empty Street, and on this one the duo are stripping things back even further than the debut album, ditching some of the more indie rock elements and concentrating entirely on folk, and yeah, it's just beautiful. It's 12 songs of total folk bliss. To be honest, I don't reasonably see how a folk album can be much better than this. I love every single track off this record, and in terms of comparative quality, I like this just as much as their debut, which, lest we forget, was my number one in 2001. 2004 though, a much stronger year, so it can't quite get to number one, but I do love it just as much as the debut. Highlights include the exquisite opener, Homesick. I just love the guitar riffs on that. The anthemic female vocals, that outro Know How, and the build-up. The phenomenally beautiful melody of Surprise Ice. Love comes like surprise ice on the water. Just absolutely beautiful. And the Smiths-esque indie disco of I'd Rather Dance With You. So yeah, this is just more top quality folk from Kings of Convenience. Coming in next, we have Winning Days by The Vines, which was the band's second album, and yet this album took a lot of flack upon release as critics dismissed it as a lazy retread of their debut, which, to be fair, kind of became the band's MO throughout the rest of their career. However, I don't agree with that opinion in regard to this one particular album. Yeah, this isn't just a retread, it's a perfection. Every idea or notion of what The Vines are is perfected right here on Winning Days. After this record, yeah, sure, it's all diminishing returns, but I think this album is by far the band's best. The production is better, the melodies are stronger, there's more variety in the soundscape, and it's just got better songs. 11 tracks, 38 minutes long, it just flies by with not a weak track in sight, hitting all the blissed out highs you could ever hope for. Highlights include the stutter gun guitars of Ride, the growling grunge of Animal Machine, the gorgeous semi-acoustic ballads of Winning Days and Sunchild, and the super atmospheric duo of Rainfall and Amnesia. One full of the joys of travel, the other just full of thunderclouds. So yeah, I absolutely fucking love this record. Awesome stuff by The Vines here. So we're going to be kicking off the top 5 with Good News for People That Like Bad News, which was the 4th album and also commercial breakout success for American indie band Modest Mouse. And yeah, Modest Mouse just take that kind of Wilco brand of twee indie and then subvert it with frontman Isaac Brock's deranged vocal style. He doesn't so much sing these songs as semi-scream and semi-rap them. It's a really odd dynamic and perhaps something of an acquired taste. If you're down with his voice, you're absolutely going to love this record, but if his voice annoys you, you're going to absolutely hate it. I personally really like the off-kilter nature of it, and the unpredictability of his vocals really keeps you on your toes. And yet this record is just incredibly consistent. There are just no bad tracks here. The cascading melodies of The World at Large, the shimmering disco licks of Float On, and the none more Wilco-esque Ocean Breathe Salty make for a really great trio of opening singles. Bury Me With It is insane with its just screamed chorus. Bukowski has a really cool Deliverance style banjo riff, and tracks like Dance Hall and Black Cadillacs are just insanely catchy. So yeah, this is just a fantastic album and good news for people who like good records. Next up, we have Talkie Walkie by Air, which was the band's 3rd album, and here we have more atmospheric chill out from the band with the usual melodic pop lilt, but on this one, the band have shied away from using sequences and have recorded everything with physical instrumentation, which gives the album an almost indie rock texture. And this is just the band firing on all cylinders, reaching their absolute peak. 10 tracks, 43 minutes, not a dull second of airtime on this entire record, and stuffed with variety and killer tunes, this is just an amazing album. Highlights include the twin Japanese flavoured singles, Cherry Blossom Girl and Alone in Kyoto, the latter featuring prominently in the awesome Sofia Coppola movie Lost in Translation. Run is awesome with its undulating vocal repetitions. Universal Traveler and Surfing on a Rocket are shimmering, catchy additions, and I personally love the pastoral keyboard riff on Mike Mills, which always reminds me of early period Genesis. So yeah, this is just an exceptional album and a career highlight for Air. Coming in third place and taking home the bronze medal, we have Funeral, which was the debut album by Arcade Fire. And yeah, if you're looking for the critical darling of the year, then this is it right here, as critics absolutely fawned over this thing upon its release. And yeah, it's easy to see why, as Arcade Fire take that kind of twee, lo-fi American indie sound and just kind of perfect it. So much so that they totally knocked Wilco off the top of the mountain and stole their throne. And yeah, this debut album has a really interesting sound, as although it's pretty lo-fi, it is also incredibly built up, featuring lots of musicians and sweeping orchestral arrangements, a damn impressive feat for a band that ostensibly is recording in their basement. And this album is absolutely fantastic and features a couple of my favourite songs ever in Neighbourhood Number 1 Tunnels and Wake Up. I can't tell you how many times I've thrown myself around my room rocking out to Tunnels. I just love the way it builds up and seems to get faster and faster as it goes on. Wake Up also just immediately hooks you in with its opening guitar riff and choral harmonies, and that opening lyric, "Something filled up my heart with nothing. Someone told me not to cry." Just chef's kiss for that one. Just absolutely awesome stuff. Add to that, you have the stomping Rebellion Lies, the Echo and the Bunnymen-esque orchestral ballad Crown of Love, and the atmospheric female-led closer In the Backseat. Yeah, Funeral is just a debut that really lives up to its hype. Great stuff. Silver medal time, and the silver medal is going to go to Infinity Land by Biffy Clyro, which was the band's third album. And sadly, during the making of this record, frontman Simon Nill's mother passed away, and that tragedy really kind of permeates this entire project. There's just such a dark aura exuding from this LP, but musically, this is one of the most dynamic, exciting records ever made. This is the sound of musicians getting frustrated with creating songs with typical structures and chord sequences. That shit all goes out the window on this LP, and each song is super unpredictable and unique. Just when you think you have a song pegged, it will switch gears and become something else entirely. Tracks like the utterly bonkers Kids from Kibble and the Fist of Light, Some Kind of Wixard, and Conceal the Weapons are just awesome examples of that. Also, the playing is just phenomenal on this album. To all rhythm guitarists out there, go listen to those chord changes, fills, and unique structuring on Only One Thing Comes to Mind. It's fucking mind-boggling. That is some tight-ass guitar work right there. Otherwise, there's just no dead weight on this LP, and plenty of other highlights, from the slow build-up of opener Glitter and Trauma, to the shoegaze of Got Wrong, through the demented heaviness of There's No Such Thing as a Jaggy Snake, to the cathartic closing ballad Pause and Turn It Up. Yeah, Infinity Land is arguably Biffy Clyro's best album, highly recommended, and just essential listening. So here we are at the top of the mountain, and we are going to have our first ever two-time winner here, because the gold medal for 2004 is going to go to Morrissey's huge comeback album, You Are the Quarry, which was the Bard's first album in 7 years and also his most successful album in general, which spawned 4 UK top 10 singles. I personally got into Morrissey at the tail end of 1997, by which time he was winding down and was very much an afterthought. Fashion had abandoned him, but I just loved his music anyway and became a huge hardcore fan in his absence, blissfully happy that fashion was against me. So imagine my shock when he came back and then was suddenly the biggest thing ever. Like, this underground thing that was mine was suddenly everybody's. It just kind of threw me for a loop, actually. I have distinct memories of like going to the record store and just being thrilled that I was able to buy a brand new Morrissey record. I also have this specific memory attached to this record, which is actually kind of funny. So at the time, I had this really hot, fiery Chinese girlfriend, and she fucking hated Morrissey with every fiber of her being. But unfortunately, like most Morrissey fans, you know, I would often just go into verbal diarrhea mode, you know, gushing over how great and iconic Morrissey was. So she got so annoyed with me around this period that she banned the word Morrissey from ever coming out of my mouth. It became like this taboo word, and she told me that she'd break up with me if I ever mentioned the word Morrissey again. And in fact, if I was there to ever refer to Morrissey, I was to refer to him as that bastard. So yeah, I thought that was pretty actually hilarious and just did that. So I spent the next year referring to Morrissey as that bastard. Oh, that bastard's got a new single out today, you know. More strange shit from my life that you didn't need to know. Anyway, back to the record. So yeah, this is Morrissey at his most slick and pop rock orientated, produced by Jerry Finn of Blink-182 fame no less. But yet, despite that fact, I absolutely love this record and every track on it. And yeah, just plenty of highlights on this. Irish Blood English Heart is worth the price of admission alone just to hear the way that Morrissey sings the name Oliver Cromwell. That's just one of the most Morrissey things ever. First of the Gang to Die is super catchy, and my favourite track off of this, The World is Full of Crashing Bores, features the lyric, "What really lies beyond the constraints of my mind? Could it be the sea, with fate mooning back at me? No, it's just more lockjawed pop stars, thicker than pig shit with nothing to convey. They're so scared to show intelligence, it might smear their lovely career." Morrissey, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest lyricist to ever pick up a microphone. So yeah, You Are the Quarry is an epic comeback that sees Morrissey showing all the whippersnapper copycats how to do it properly. Just awesome stuff. And that's it, that's my 2004 list, but that might not be your list. Please sound off in the comment section and tell me all the classics that I've missed. Like, share, subscribe, and all that other kind of YouTube jazz. Take care of yourself. Make sure to check back for my 2005 list, which is another awesome year. But most importantly, just keep on ranking.